Hey, what's going on, guys? We are back with another episode of the PokeTalk podcast. The sun's trying to kill us, but what you been up to? You been chasing those auroras?
Well, I was out tonight, as you know, and I didn't find any. I mean, there's a little bit, right? Like, you could see it with the camera. You can kind of see the color a little bit when it came to the photo, but I couldn't. Well, I did go out a little bit last night, but I went down like the street a little bit, and I couldn't really see much. And I was pretty tired. I worked all day,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and I said, screw it, I'm just going to go to Alaska. And honestly, I mean, it's cool. I've seen some great photos. The camera's been able to pick up some incredible stuff, but the actual what you see to your eye, I think, is pretty underwhelming for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you guys didn't know, or if you're not from the U.S., there's a big solar storm happening right now and yesterday, so a few days before you're listening to this. And the northern lights, especially last night, reached all the way down to Texas. Texas. So yeah, about 9-10 p.m. for us here in central U.S. There was a big, nice one that you could see, but they faded pretty quick. Like, even the 10 minutes we went out and looked, like, you could tell they faded, and apparently, like, that was the one everybody saw really well. Those are the ones you see pictures of in, like, Texas, and never really got as intense as that. But yeah, pretty interesting. It's awfully beautiful when the sun's trying to kill you, but can only imagine like a solar flare that takes out life on Earth and how cool that would look before it actually happens.
That was on one of the 7 ways the Earth could go.
Honestly, it's probably the scariest to me. Like, anything with the sun, or the sun blowing up or going out, or giant solar flares.
Now, this was quite some time ago. When this is, if you're like a millennial and watch the Discovery Channel, whatever, back in like the 2000s, there was this little series they had where 7 ways the Earth could go, and one of the ways was like a solar flare. It was like number 5 or something like that, and like they go into like the bacteria and your digestive system would stop working from the radiation, and like your fingernails and the hair and stuff would fall. I'm like, good God, that just sounds awful.
I mean, yeah, there's a certain range of where that could actually happen, and it'd be just like radiation sickness. But I think if it was like, if you're talking wiping out Earth, I mean, it would just like scorch Earth and just burn everything with it, and everything would die. But,
well, in this thing, it said it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily the sun. I forget what they said, but what their hypothesis was, and it was like, you know, it wasn't like a direct hit, but it was enough to slowly kill things, or it might have been a star exploding. Actually, it might have been what it was, and I don't think it was the sun. I don't know. I can't remember which one it was. I would have to look into it, but that reminded me of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably the sun they were talking about, but I forgot how close the nearest star is besides the sun. But
yeah, besides the sun, exactly.
But yeah, it could scorch us, and everything would just.
The black hole was the most interesting, though. Just slowly stretch into like infinity, you know.
Yeah. This kind of sounds like about the time the Alien show hit, because some of these.
It probably was, honestly. It probably was out there. I think number 1 was like climate change, but like you had like obviously like the machines was like number 2, I think, and honestly with AI they're not too far off.
Yeah, well, yeah, the solar flare thing. I mean, it's very well a possibility. Not how they describe it, though. I don't think, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. But yeah, for Pokemon Talk today, we'll be talking about a few big topics, but nothing like very high in quantity. We're going to speculate on them just to have a little bit more to say about them. But we have the Pokemon company which revealed their numbers for Japan, like how much they sold, gross sales. This is not net sales, but we'll kind of break that down in other TCGs. Nintendo is to announce the Switch successor within this fiscal year. So by March, we should be able to know some info on the Switch 2 or whatever they decide to call it. And GameStop is going to be buying and selling graded Pokemon cards next week.
Only some, not everyone.
Yeah, that's I don't know. GameStop is such an interesting story within the last 5 years. It's just wild, but yeah, which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's see. Let's do the since I'm kind of on that page. Let's do with the sales.
Yeah, so Pokemon TCG this is the headline, earned record $857 million in Japan for 2023, more than Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, and others combined. And Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic are on this list as well, Yu-Gi-Oh! Being number 2. And pretty nuts, pretty crazy. I mean, really the only thing we can take from this graph showing growth is like their comparison to 2022, which is in fact 137%. So they had some awesome growth, 30% growth over last year. And pretty wild.
Yeah, that one thing I noticed that stands out on this list too is One Piece.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying One Piece is going to continue that run or continue going up, but I mean, as being a very, very young TCG, that's some impressive numbers at like 170 million.
Yeah, and obviously their compared to 2022 is, in my opinion, pretty inflated. It's 313% higher than last year because we have seen the hype, but also they had a lot of print run issues and they've resolved some of those. So literally when it came out, people were talking about it in 2022, you literally couldn't get your hands on it like at all. So now they're finally being able to get products in people's hands. It's just like Lorcana. Like you can't buy first chapter right now, but pretty much every time I go into the store, you can buy Floodborn or Inklings by the packs. So, and there's quite a bit of them. So I know it's not the case for the first chapter, but 9 times out of 10 that I went in, there's plenty of stock for the other 2 sets in Lorcana. And that's kind of what's happened to One Piece. Like some of the more desirable sets might not be there, but you can buy product when you want to buy product. It might not be exactly what you want, but it's there, so the sales are going up. Thing that's interesting to me is just how far ahead it is of number 2, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's, let's see, 2023 earnings. Yeah. Like Pokemon was sitting at, trying to see, I guess we'll just talk US dollar numbers, but 857 million for USD on Pokemon, and it's only 302 million for Yu-Gi-Oh! So, yeah, that's almost tripled. Almost like 2.5 times to triple range. So pretty nuts how far ahead that is.
Well, and if you look at the growth of Yu-Gi-Oh, you can argue that it potentially had a slight down year if you include inflation.
Possibly.
I'm not sure what it was in Japan, the overall inflation, but I mean, 103%, you kind of have to wonder. They didn't quite grow. I mean, I'm not saying they're like Yu-Gi-Oh's dying or anything because it's not, but they just didn't grow, and it's most notable compared to obviously Pokemon and even White Schwartz, which is you're talking about on a smaller scale, but still.
And pretty much everything that's not noteworthy on here is kind of declining. One that sticks out to me is Magic, because that's arguably probably the 3rd most popular, maybe even the 2nd most popular here in the US side, right behind Pokemon. Because it might be more popular than Yu-Gi-Oh! Here. but it's only showing like total sales there were 33 million. So that compared to, Pokemon is just like nothing. And it's showing 94% over 2022. That actually surprised me though. I was expecting that number to be even lower because they are seemingly doing everything they can to make Magic unenjoyable for loyal players. So I don't know.
And what about Digimon? I shouldn't crap on it because let's face it, we both loved Digimon as kids.
Apparently, the revamped Digimon is actually pretty good, but it's just Digimon. It's not that huge. 85% over last year. Not even a million in earnings. So it's very niche. Everything else that's that small is like unheard of. Vanguard, I have heard of. That actually took off. It got pretty hot when it came out a while back, and a lot of people are pretty loyal to that. I feel like. Um, but yeah, you have Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel. You have Yu-Gi-Oh! And then you have Duel Masters, which Duel Masters is like a little different, but um, yeah, two on there were like direct Yu-Gi-Oh! Brands by Konami. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of impressed me, actually. It's just weird, like how popular it is and how many earnings or how much earnings is for them. And I don't know. I think Magic is by far the better game in my opinion. It's just literally the company killing Magic, but I guess Yu-Gi-Oh's got it too.
Well, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! I think there might be a nostalgia boom still that has affected the Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. We know it affected their market big time. Um, and I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is always going to be second fiddle to Pokemon, but I think it's always going to maintain a pretty strong presence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I actually haven't. No, one thing I will say, I feel like the shows and games are pretty important to keep that like cyclical sort of generational thing going. And I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that still play Yu-Gi-Oh. They obviously play that with their kids, but how many people are necessarily still into it from the younger generations because of the shows or the games? Like I feel like there's not really much with that. Like you still have Pokemon having a new season every year. And honestly, from what I've watched of this newest show of theirs, Horizons, is actually pretty good. It feels more like an anime.
Yeah.
I know I said that kind of last time, but like you really get that feel this time.
They have a lot of spin-offs too. Like a lot of their YouTube spin-offs
Yeah.
or their mini series, they are very anime like. A lot of them are super short, like literally anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes per episode, usually closer to 3. And there's like 10 to 20 of them. So they're really good productions. Like there's one, I think Hisuian Snow. I mean, it comes off as kind of like almost like a dark, like sentimental Pokemon story. And then there's Generations, Evolutions, and one other. What was it? I can't remember. Origins, maybe, is what I'm trying to think of. But those series are really good. I highly recommend watching those. Um, yeah, they're really good. But I wish they would just make more of those or make like a full on anime of those and just run with it. Because, yeah, they're much more mature. The battle scenes are much
Well,
more aggressive.
and that's been the
But
complaint we've had with them for a while now. How they don't seem to really branch out too much to their standard MO, and it's very frustrating.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's just, it's a stretch beyond what they're imagining for the brand, I guess. But
Because I feel like Pokemon is considered not necessarily a kids thing, but like because it's not right. It's multi generational. It's considered like a mundane. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of people that like Pokemon and are cool with Pokemon, but it doesn't feel like it has spread to the true mainstream corners with certain people. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's still a certain demographic that you see collecting and playing with it to an extent.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. even like I don't know. I hate bringing up Lorcana constantly, but there was this person at work who was just talking about how big of a Disney fan she was, and they go to like Disney every single year, and fanatics basically. They are middle-aged people who go to Disney every year, no kids. They're just Disney fans. They grew up loving it. I guess they had family members who loved it, just followed it all their lives. Had no idea what Lorcana was. And I was like, you should check it out. Like, they made this new card game to kind of keep up with Pokemon. And, like, everyone knows what Pokemon is, but nobody knows what Lorcana is still, even the Disney super fans. So, I don't know. To some extent, Pokemon has reached or at least hit the mind of those audiences and stuff that, like, even Lorcana, even for Disney super fans to not hear about it, it's weird. But maybe it is just totally different demographic. We also thought that Lorcana could take off because of that reason, how there's just so many dedicated hardcore Disney fans, but maybe there is a little spillover. Maybe they're just two totally separate people. It's just weird, but I feel like Pokemon, though, it has struck a chord. Like, anybody who's into Pokemon, I mean, there's a very high percentage who are into the cards and like the cards.
Mm-hmm.
Some types maybe just video games, but most of the time, people like the cards at least a little bit, or are knowledgeable, knowing like what they are and knowing that there's like a market for cards and all that stuff. But yep, the numbers are pretty crazy. Like we said, this is gross sales. This is not net sales, so not counting their overhead or all their operating costs and all this business. So take it with a grain of salt, but nevertheless, they are doing very well and good to see.
Better than ever, even.
Yeah, yeah, the best.
uh, yeah, and still, there's serious issues.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe if they're seeing this much growth year over year, it makes sense why they just ignore like what would make easy money, because they already are making easy money. They don't have to do much. Um, so yeah, just with the animes and mini series and all that stuff specifically, it'd just be a little nicer if they cared a little more. But maybe on the Switch too. So I guess we can hop on over to that, talk about that if you want a little bit.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's see here. Headline on this one is Nintendo to announce a Switch successor within fiscal year, meaning before 2025 March ish. And yeah, pretty exciting. A lot of people think it's just going to be like the Switch 2. This is the first time they've even acknowledged the next console. So it's nice to see them acknowledge that something's coming. And Sony and PlayStation aren't really in the best spots right now as far as console gaming goes. And Nintendo's kind of just being Nintendo, just kind of sticking to their guns. As small as they are, they're just consistent. They're going to release a new console, and I could see this pretty much being a very well received successor to the Switch, because I think they did a good job with the Switch. They just need to upgrade a few things and get some big titles on there, which is kind of what I want to talk about.
Well, I can't help but notice, which is a key one, is going to be backwards compatible, which is fantastic for everybody. Like, if it weren't backwards compatible, that would literally piss off their entire consumer base, really, I would say. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's
Oh
some
yeah,
people
for
that
sure.
I've seen. I mean, I know some people have bought quite a few Switch games, so being able to have that backwards compatibility makes people feel comfortable continue buying games even until the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing is saying that it might not come out till March 2024, and wasn't when was Pokemon Z Day coming out? Was that April? or is that February? I think it was February.
Uh, did they say a date? I think it was just early next year, but I don't know if they actually set a
I
date.
thought.
But yeah, there was some news not long ago where some IPs were delaying, like some stuff that had release dates for 2024 pushed back to the first quarter of
Let me see here.
2025. And I think it's
So this is going to
because
be,
of the Switch 2 being delayed.
yeah,
But
yeah. It says 2025. So my guess is that they're going to tie this to the launch. Is my guess.
yeah,
Which what better way to create, great sales and hype and desire for the new platform for all of 2025 than making the Gen 10 essentially. Well, I mean, excuse me, the C to A.
yeah. Nice little side game. A lot of people liked Arceus, so it'd be nice to pick up
Mm-hmm.
off that and kind of run with
Mm-hmm.
that.
And then they might even come out with the second game at the end of the year if they follow some trends.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think they're gonna do like ZA, probably at launch or shortly after, like very shortly after, and potential talk of the next generation coming, holiday next year after they polish it up more. So they'll get a lot of people early, kind of gauge the demand, and then what better game to come out with than a mainline Pokemon game for the holiday season. And you've already taken care of the diehard fans who are going to buy the Switch either way, so you can gauge demand and kind of take care of that. And then you basically, for the holidays, get everyone who hasn't bought one yet to buy in. So, pretty typical strategy there. I just think that's what they're going to do with all the rumors we've heard about these games. And yeah, have to see how it goes. I'll probably pick one up. I might wait until the next mainline Pokemon game because that's kind of what I did with a lot of the systems. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm prepared to drop like a $400 bundle or whatever it's going to be, just because. I mean, I love the Switch, but it's like I don't. I played it enough to make it worth the money I spent on it, but I haven't played enough to merit buying another $400 system. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Well, and you hardly play at all, in my opinion. But
Yeah, like
so like
I'm
you
I'm
just
like I'm like I'm like a new layer of casual. Like I'm hardly ever play, So I mean, it's true. Maybe if I had somebody that really was interested in playing it, that like with me, that'd be a different situation. But I just feel like I should always be doing something, and there's like maybe 12, 15 hours a week in which I could probably fill in something with potentially games, and I just like it's okay. That's why I'd rather just play the classics because
yeah.
I can come in and out any single time, play stop, and it's okay.
There's a lot of games like that today. I mean, you could play
I
the
mean, I'm
new
sure there is
Pokemon
too.
games like that and just save it
I'm
and
sure there
come
is.
back.
It's just it's the nostalgia though. The nostalgia.
Yeah. I've been wanting to kind of get the itch to play Soul Silver again. Those are my favorite games. There's a crazy video I saw not long ago about this guy breaking down the history of Johto and the Heart Gold Soul Silver, and pretty much how every single thing in that game is like referenced to something in real life in the you know Japan region or Japan's culture. And it was a crazy video, but they went into detail about how all the towers are like real towers and what they represent and the history behind the real life area of the towers, and they incorporate that in the games. Even the unknown ruins are kind of incorporated in like Japanese history. They're kind of like their prehistoric landmarks. Like it was a crazy video, but if you guys want a little deep dive of Pokemon random knowledge, deep dive on the history of gold and silver and stuff like that. But yeah, got anything else to say about the old Switch?
No, I'm interested to see what it looks like. I'm sure we'll hear something soon. You would think. There apparently is a Nintendo Direct for June, but probably won't have anything on it. My guess is they don't really want to talk about it too much, and maybe they're worried about it might influence sales, maybe. Um, but if it's backwards compatible, I don't see why it really matters.
Yeah. And with the backwards compatibility, like it surprised me nowadays if something doesn't go back compatible because it used to be pretty normal, and then anytime there hasn't been something like that, there's been kickback. But yeah, especially for Nintendo, like they're in a position they hardly ever discount their games. They're pretty known to like you have to pay full price no matter what. So it'd be really douche move for them to do it, especially. But you're never gonna buy a Pokemon game at a discounted price directly from Nintendo. So it's kind of annoying. Even their Mario games and all stuff like that. Like they hold new prices pretty much all the time. Sometimes on Black Friday you'll get like 5%, 10% off deal, but yeah.
I feel like they've been even like their games you already own a hard copy of, like their older games, like SNES. I've seen you're still paying a decent price just to be able to buy it, and it's like it'd be cheaper if you just got the damn cart.
Yeah.
Like if you would go on eBay or whatever and just get the cartridge, assuming you have the system, and
That's what
just
I
doing
did. I
that.
just bought Animal Crossing not long ago because some friends at work talked me into buying it. I just bought the cartridge because I have a Switch Lite, so it fits in like a little case pretty well. And yeah, I just bought the cartridge, no box or anything, because they still sell well. Like a game with no box still sells for 30, $40 because the only other option's buying it new. So it's annoying, but it is what it is. They hold their value, so that's nice. Looks like I can't believe this. Like the original Switch was announced over 9 years ago.
Believe it.
That's kind of crazy.
Well, I'm kind of surprised they've held on this long before other generations. I think it's they believe they should no longer care themselves with what Xbox and um, PlayStation have done, and I understand where they're coming from. They see them as their own entity. You know, you got PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and they see it as themselves with Nintendo. I know a lot of people buy emulators for some of their stuff, but I mean, Nintendo's going to have that family demographic and that like party demographic. I feel like, oh, you have friends over, let's play some Nintendo Switch. Easy to play. Everybody's played it. It takes no learning hardly because you played Nintendo at some point in your life, and you can just walk right into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they always have kind of been their own separate thing. Um, so yeah, it's nice. They're just kind of doing their own thing, making fun games, little quirky games. I wish I had like a proper handheld. The Switch Lite is okay, but I just want that game that I can pack with me that's not like a giant hassle. So, yeah, that's how I like to play my games. But yeah, they're trying to be this in between, like a console slash handheld. And I think they'll continue that because that's just, worked for them. And before this was the Wii U, which kind of flopped. It was kind of that in between market as well. But yeah, Switch has seen some really good success, and I think they'll just kind of improve on that, hopefully.
Hmm.
But with that said, also, like, really the only thing they just say besides the backwards compatibility is like it might feature a larger 8-inch screen with 1080p resolution. Like, I mean, yeah, that should be a given. Most things are higher than that now. Phones are beyond that, like pretty insane amount above that. But yeah, it is what it is when you're mass producing a system. They just get by with what they have to. But GameStop. Speaking of used games and consoles, speaking of
Hmm.
also that new Animal Crossing New Horizons game, I was going to go buy it used at GameStop. I was thinking, Well, they're going to be way overpriced for like a raw copy off eBay because they're GameStop. So I could buy it on eBay for 35. I was thinking maybe 45. That thing was they wanted $56 for a used copy when the new one is 60. It's like how is GameStop even surviving? It's like, well, for one, they weren't, until like, all the
Meme stock.
yeah, the meme stock shenanigans happened. So that's one thing that saved them, and they actually pivoted into more TCG products during the TCG hype. So they actually survived because of all that, and now they're getting into buying and selling graded cards. So pretty interesting there.
Well, and if you think about it, this isn't the first time that they've changed and in their history. I don't know if you remember it, but you used to be able to go on GameStop.com and you used to be able to find like a bunch of old school games. Well, at the time, right? So you're talking about 2005, 2006. You could find NES games, SNES games, Sega games, all that stuff. You go into a GameStop, guess what you would see? You would see like, you know how they have the Walmart $1 or whatever $5 DVD bins? You would see games like that just in a big old like area. They had so many, they were like just trying to liquidate that thing. Same with their online. Shit was cheap. And, they eventually got rid of it and they started kind of going away towards that. They started maybe mainly focusing on the modern era and maybe the generation before. And that's about how far that they went. And it got to a point where, well, we're not really making the same amount because everybody's going on Steam or they're doing emulators or whatever with getting their games. They're not coming to us.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's start selling more merch, you know, more merch and different like geek stuff, and that helped them out too. Like I will say this: GameStop is a survivor. Will they
I'm a
survive till the
survivor.
end? I'm a survivor. Yeah, but will they survive? How long will they survive? No clue. But say what you will, but they adapt.
Yeah, well, they kind of had to.
Hmm.
So,
I mean, that's true. It's adapt or die. Desperation is the mother of innovation. So that's exactly what's going on.
yeah, I don't know. They just always been ripping people off, and they finally got their dues. And I don't know. They're just always so scummy to me every time I go into GameStop because they're trying to get you to. They're like vultures trying to get you to sign up for their power reward junk. And I went in there when I think it was Shining Fates came out just to buy a box when everybody was like, scrambling to find product. I was like, look, I just want two boxes, two ETBs. I'm just going to open them for fun. Um, they didn't like call anybody when they came in. They were like selling them out the back door for like higher prices. They were letting people buy like entire cases, and I don't know. When I was checking out during all this, just pre-ordering them, like the dude in our local GameStop got like mad at me because I didn't want to sign up for rewards.
Bro, you don't
He's
want rewards? Bro.
he's like, dude, it's
Bro.
free. It's like, you can just sign up. He's like, I was like, no, no, thanks. He's like, dude, it's like literally free. I mean, come on, like, come on, you should do it. It's like, well,
Bro.
now I'm definitely not gonna do it because you're pissing me off.
Bro.
But I don't know. I don't want to get emails like I know it's probably free, it's probably beneficial, but I don't want to have to see another email more than I have to. I got a lot to worry about in my life as is. I don't need other businesses with my information that you're probably just going to get hacked and sell it to somebody else anyway. You know, screw off, man. Leave me alone. He's bullying
It's only,
me.
it's only $15 a year, bro. I
Yeah.
forget what it was. I got it, and I mean, dude, I don't even use it. Like, I don't buy games, so it's like besides retro ones, so I got no desire essentially.
Yeah, I forgot how much you had to spend in store to actually make it worth it. It is worth it if you do it, but it's like I just don't want to have to even think about it. Like I don't want to have an extra thought in my brain because I'm just thinking about other stuff all the time. So it's more of a simple life thing to me than it is, you know, getting the rewards. But it is what it is. They apparently are going to start accepting PSA 8 cards and higher. Cards valued at $500 or more will not be accepted, which is understandable. They just want to get, the Timmies in there, the low value stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then graded cards from CGC and Beckett will not be allowed yet. So they're only doing PSA. So that's kind of funny. So yeah, they apparently from their sales call, they specifically want to sell Pokemon cards. Simply put, Pokemon is GameStop's fastest selling TCG, and it's by far the most popular franchise. They want to sell
Well,
cards like an LGS.
in some ways, GameStop is kind of an LGS for certain areas. Yeah, do we have a couple? Yeah, it has more of a culture in those areas, but generally speaking, they don't really specialize in Pokemon.
Yeah.
Not one of them do, and I'm sure there are towns like that all across the country. I'm sure there's game stores in those same cities, but there's whole areas where I'm sure GameStop is the closest sort of LGS slash thing near you. Well, if that becomes the case, I mean, it's a no-brainer to go check on what's going on. And remember what I said when it came to their retro games? Well, what would it be like for like their character rares or some of their art rares, for example? You know what I'm talking about? Those $1 cards potentially. I mean, they'll probably be overpriced. Let's be real. They'll want $10 for them.
Yeah. That's another thing too. Apparently this isn't going to be publicly announced until later this year when they're getting close to rolling it out, but should have more details soon on pricing. I'm sure it's going to be like where they literally give you maybe 50%. Maybe. It's going to not be worth it. No doubt. They're going to want to guarantee the money, so they're going to want to, sell it at 70% and make profit essentially if they have to. So I bet they're only going to offer like 40, 50% just to have the cash there, because there's no shame in their game. Just bring, if I brought this used copy of Animal Crossing to them right now, they'd probably buy it for $15 and sell it for 50 something. So when it's worth 30, they probably even buy it for less than that, honestly.
Best I can do is $1.50. Okay. Well, I remember I did trade, and as kids, that's who they got most. Like, I feel like some of the value that they gave to us was terrible for certain games. And then I know you got to make margins, okay? Like, there's a certain thing with margins on what you have for new and how much you got to be able to sell. Well, obviously, for certain used stuff, it's got to be higher margins. It just has to be. But I feel like they were making like 80 to 90% margins.
Yeah.
If not more. Like that's
Oh yeah, easily.
that's approaching like you just got highway robbed territory. Now back in the day, there really wasn't a whole lot of options, like in terms of reselling. So you either had to just buy it in cash or somehow try to sell it through friends of friends, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's Craigslist, but everybody knows how sketch that shit used to be.
Yep. Yeah, I remember like having this huge stack of cards or games when I was little for PS2. I'm like, I don't play these games anymore. I'm gonna bring in this huge stack of like 15 of them, and I like ran the numbers. I was little entrepreneur mind, running the numbers. Well, I bought this for $40, and so I'm gonna get like 20 for it. And I bought this like it's a greatest hits, so this was only $10. So then maybe they'll give me like 5. And I had this number in my head of like I remember like $80 to $100, and they were offering me like $15. And I was like crushed. I was like, man, these guys suck. And so
Well, and like
they haven't
sometimes
gotten
like
better.
yeah, I deal with that a lot at work. People want more than what they want for certain things, and you kind of have to. Some people like you kind of have it even with Vince with heady gaming. Like there's certain stuff he can't just flip, especially certain graded cards, right? So because of that, he's got to buy it at a margin that's comfortable. And if somebody says yes, it's in his favor. And that's to basically secure him from not buying a bunch of stuff where he can't flip.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense from a small business perspective. It does. But it was frustrating because they were barely giving you, 10% of what it was worth.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's understandable. Like they're just there. They don't necessarily, want to buy it for close to the real price. They just want to guarantee that money, and it makes sense. But I mean, you just ripping off, like you said, kids, and that's what they're going to do with the cards too. They're going to bring in all these graded cards that these kids bought in the last 2 years because they watch these YouTubers buy them and they don't really know the value of them, and they're just going to rip them off just like they did video games.
That
So,
too. Some people are like, "Oh, that's only worth $2." No, it's actually worth 50 cents.
yeah.
Resell for 10.
Yep, it's going to be the exact same thing that happened with the games over again.
But at the same time, there is a certain market kind of expected. Like I realize, what the Vince has the best rates in the local area, maybe in some of the best rates in the entire state in terms of what he gives between cash and card, and it's set more or less. Now, where he starts coming to play is if it's higher end stuff. That's where it's like they start potentially going higher on what they could potentially do. But even as a brick and mortar store, dealing with especially like taxes, for example, on like eBay and all that, there is a certain amount that they have to cap at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said it was like 73% was the most he could give in cash.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now that
that's
might,
pretty typical.
yeah, now that might change, but and that he might be able to do better. But that's because especially if he does it like a private sale, depending on what it may be, right? But anyways, the whole point is there's just certain rates that you're going to get, and you're not going to get the same rates as if you go to a card show.
Yeah. Or even like the card shows. Like, I've noticed some of them are paying like 60, like 50 to 60% ish on like what people consider junk slabs, like maybe mid grade WotC cards that nobody really likes and or there's plenty of. Like I don't know, like a jungle scyther that's a PSA 6. Like some shows and stuff, they're starting to pay a little less for those, and it's understandable. It's just like, yeah, no one's gonna buy this, but if you want to just get rid of it, I'm gonna just throw out a number. You can always say no, so just keep that in mind.
And then if you say yeah, that's how you make money at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So that's exactly what GameStop's gonna do, but just being the corporate BS that it is, it's just not going to be a good experience for anybody, I don't think. And if it's anything like their games, they're just going to dry it up over 10 years and, pivot again. They got a nag for staying alive and pivoting, so it's interesting, their story.
Well, I could see this causing them to actually sustain, not maybe at their size, but I could see them cause them to sustain to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. Especially, or even like in a smaller town, the only thing you have is a GameStop, maybe. Like I could see it. Now, it'd be interesting if they start having like league night.
Yeah. Which I don't know if they would do that, but it'd be cool if they could set up a league and participate in the league and all that, but they'll leave that to the LGSs because that's not really profitable there. I don't think, but or not enough for them to be worried about it. But yeah, that's all I really had to. That's all I really had to say. Looks like they might test some trade and play events, but I don't think they would do like official league type stuff. They might just have like a trade night or something just to get kids in the store or something like that, which that would be smart. Um, but yeah, interesting times. But that's pretty much all I had to talk about this time around. You got anything else to say?
I mean, there really wasn't much. I mean, we keeping tabs with the KC Con. There's still no updates. I think at this point, this is about it. Nathan.
Yeah, maybe our next episode could be talking strategy again for Collecticon because we're looking at
So the 26th would be the next episode, and
yeah we're
then that'd
looking
be the
at
23rd.
26th, and
So
then
that'd
there's a
be
June 8th episode.
so there's three technically, and then it'll line up perfectly where the episode after KC Con is the next weekend. So that'll line up perfectly.
Yeah, we'll think about it. If there's nothing else big, we'll do Collecticon episode either this next episode or the one after that, talking about our plans and what we'll be getting. So with that though, I guess we'll wrap up. Kind of liking these short and sweet ones, kind of straight to the point. Kind of easy when there's not as much news happening, but yeah,
Yeah, I
you got
mean,
anything
when there's
else?
not much going on, we gotta fill the air somehow, guys. Like you're just gonna have to deal with us.
Yeah, we do pretty good like speculating on stuff. Like really, we only have
I
3 topics this time, and we're
and we have enough
almost an hour.
humor, and we got enough humor going on to make it worth your while.
Yeah. Plus, with my busy schedule here lately and my work
Yeah,
schedule, it's like these short ones might have to be a little more common. But
which is I think outside of certain things like the KC Con and certain big things like things within the hobby that might happen, I think that's more or less okay going forward. Like maybe towards the fourth quarter, maybe not, but overall.
yeah,
It's hard to there's not enough information and stuff like things between major news events within the hobby to merit necessarily a 2.5 hour or 2 hour episode every 2 weeks. Now the only like even how like a lot of these other podcasts do it is that they have Q&As or they'll have guests. That's how they do it. So they'll have like one episode a month essentially that they actually talk about stuff, which makes it easier.
yeah,
And then you'll have one episode each month where you have somebody as a guest and you talk about certain things.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be pretty good. I saw someone post about the Northern Lights again. People are seeing them again tonight, but
Are they?
they're not as good as they were last night at this
Well,
time.
it's not even worth my time. I was out there for 45 minutes. Actually, it's closer to an hour, and I didn't see shit. So, and then
Fuck you, son.
there's a local photographer that says I'm not even seeing anything tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like, there's somebody who's a local photographer. So pretty much, yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So yeah, and that was just 10
Like 10
minutes ago.
p.m. Oh, I see.
No, that was literally just 10 minutes ago. So I mean that was last night was the night for it, which is
Gotcha.
pretty cool. It is what it is. I saw a little bit of it. Again, I'll just see the real thing. I'll just actually see the crazy experience and just go in person. In fact, I was even talking to one of my friends like, "Hey, you just want to go to Alaska next year?" Like Alaska is a bucket list area, so it'd be totally worth it.
Yeah. My parents went on a cruise up there, but
See, I wouldn't want to do a cruise. I would want to camp.
yeah, I don't think I would either. But or I would
I mean,
like to
it's nice.
drive,
Drive up
take like a
there.
month off somehow and just drive all
I
through
don't think I
Canada.
can do that. I mean, I don't know. It would be worth it, and you wouldn't be spending that much money if you camped the whole way up.
Yeah.
Like it's just like the gas and the food. Like I think you could actually make it relatively. I'm not saying it will be cheap. I'm just saying I don't think it'll be less, any significantly more expensive than like going and say you're going to I don't know Paris or New York, L.A., Hawaii. All these other areas, but you're seeing more of like Earth in doing so.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. If I ever have like a ton of money, don't have to work, I'd probably like hit the road, like get a rig that I can camp in and sleep out of and operate out of and just travel all over.
Yeah.
go to places in Europe and stuff and do whatever. But as far as the U.S. and Canada goes, and even some spots in Mexico, just drive around, be
I mean, I
chilling.
think what I'd probably do is um, fly out there and then just rent in a car and then drive all over Alaska. I almost would rather do that, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there is a large stretch of Canada where it's just boring.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. You're probably going up through I don't know, it would be beautiful, I'm sure. But
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, guys, thanks for listening once again. And we'll hit you up the next time. So we'll see you then.
peace.